Welcome to the Brave Home Service Pro podcast, where we're all about helping blue-collar business owners like you to unlock your inner business beast. I'm your host, Lee Miller, a seasoned home service and construction industry veteran turned business coach. In this podcast, I'll teach you how to break free from your own limitations, gain the knowledge, tools, and mindset to succeed, and guide you as you trailblaze your way to the top of your industry. My system is simple: set bold goals and take brave action to achieve them. Together, we'll build your business into its full potential. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and join our Facebook group for more tips and tricks to boost your business using the link in the show notes. Now let's dive into the Brave Home Service Pro podcast. Your journey to business greatness begins right here. Awesome. Okay, we're live. So, Victor, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Me and Victor have been friends for a while. Victor has been helping me out quite a bit with my clients and getting them set up with virtual assistants. But I'm going to steal your introduction from you, Victor. If you want to jump in, tell us a little bit about you, how you got into this, and maybe a little bit about your entrepreneurial spark as well as an entrepreneur. Tell us how you got into business.
Sure. Thank you, Lee, for having me. I'm Victor. I'm one of 3 owners at Treantly. It's a pretty young business, been about 2.5 years. And what we do is we help North American businesses hire and retain exceptional people from the Philippines. My background before this, I had a career in finance. I worked in corporate investment banking and then a little bit in private equity and venture capital, as well as the family office side. And this opportunity really came to me during the pandemic when we saw businesses could not find local workers. So we certainly are not the first ones to the party where there was this major shortage of staffing and this great need. So, we looked over the pond and there's a very developed talent pool in the Philippines and other areas of the world. My wife is actually Filipina as well, so it just made sense. And so I just jumped both feet in and I haven't looked back.
I love it. And you just got back from Manila yourself, right? So you've just been there to actually meet the team and see what it's all about. What were some of your takeaways from going over there?
Yeah, that's right. It's amazing. I spent 13 days in the Philippines. I was in all 3 regions. So I spent some time in Manila and then I went down to Cebu. We actually flew everybody there in our team, had a team of 20, and we had a 3-night all-inclusive resort stay in Mactan. It's by the beach. You should see it. It's beautiful. And then I spent some time in the southern part of the Philippines as well, in Davao City. And I guess the big takeaway for, what I've been saying to people anyways is, first of all, the traffic is crazy, especially during December. I think it is the worst traffic in the world, which if we get back around to this topic, it's one of the reasons why so many people are going to virtual assistant jobs from traditional corporate environments. But the other thing is, the Philippines is incredibly developed. I mean, I think the Airbnb I was staying was on the 63rd floor or the 65th floor. I mean, here in Canada, that would be a very tall building.
Yeah.
Right? I think they're building something in Burnaby that's 80 stories tall, and that's going to break the record. And these buildings, they're earthquake proof, up to 9.1, I hear. And so what you see is not kind of this vacation beach spot that people might imagine on a postcard, but you're seeing skyscrapers from JP Morgan, AT&T, Accenture, TELUS, IBM, and so forth. So it's an incredible economy with very resilient people, very friendly people, and I'm looking forward to going back again very soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think a lot of us, especially people in North America, when you envision someone from the Philippines working for your company, you're where your mind runs to. You're not thinking developed country with all of the amenities that you might even have somewhere like Vancouver or even, Toronto, even in the US somewhere. And I was watching your story while you were gone on Instagram and I'm going, wow,
where is this?
This is not what I thought it was going to look like,
Yeah.
So that was super
it's
cool.
incredible. I'll just add, some members on my team and people we interview, we always get them to do a speed check. We check their computer equipment and we get them to run a speed test with their internet. And oftentimes I'm seeing what I'm getting with my TELUS Fiber 300. I mean, they're just until recently, they've all had faster internet than me. Yeah. So yes, there are areas where the infrastructure is lacking, but it's just an incredibly developed economy that, because of the, Spanish and US occupation going way back, whether for the Army or the Navy, the whole country has infrastructure, just not for traffic, but for working, for business, it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's super cool. And you know, like I think in 2025, the options that we have as business owners, and this isn't just construction, but just generally in all businesses in the US, where we are dealing with a tighter budget. We're trying to get more for less. We're trying to maximize productivity while also remaining as lean as possible. You know, the Philippines has given us an incredible option. And I would even put it up there that the rise of virtual assistants is kind of coming up in the same time as AI. You know, it's like if you can't find
Mm-hmm.
an app to do it, a virtual assistant can remotely, you know, if it still needs to be done from a human. So personally, for me, I don't think it's ever been easier or cheaper to run a business from an online standpoint, for sure.
No, that's
So
right. If you look
yeah.
at the last couple of years, especially with down in the States with the administration's subsidies on the solar subsidies for companies to install residential solar or commercial solar, a lot of these companies have jumped ahead. That's where we saw a major demand. So whether they were looking for appointment setters, cold callers on the sales side, or project coordinators, I mean, we've actually placed electrical engineers, licensed electrical engineers, to help diagnose problems with they're not there to install the panels,
Mhm.
but they can talk to the techs that are on site, or they'll help clients troubleshoot problems. So I would say solar is one of the first industries during the pandemic. They still needed to grow, they still need to figure things out. That kind of went that way. But we also saw that with real estate, and now we're seeing more with HVAC, home improvement, and all sorts of other trades as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's someone for everyone here, right? Like there's a tailored option for you as specific as you can get from what you need from someone in that space. Uh, you know, VAs as an option are absolutely incredible because they're extremely dynamic and versatile. And I think that's what a lot of these contractors, the ones that I work with, who are in that 200K to their first 4 or 5 million,
Mm,
the number of jobs or the number of hats that these contractors are wearing, someone needs to take some of those hats off your head so that you can focus on other things like sales, or you can focus on other things like production. You know, your solution here, your VAs, kind of bridges that gap, but also in a way where you're not met with the typical type of skepticism of hiring someone remotely online. Like your guys are vetted, they're trained, they're sourced. You're recruited these people specifically, and you're doing everything in your power to actually keep them. If that's the case, like tell us a little bit more about your recruitment process and how you find your people, and then we'll get into a little bit about where would someone start? Like when should they start considering a VA? Right. So we'll start with
okay.
that first, and then we'll move into what you should be considering.
Okay, so funny story. I will admit. So again, as I mentioned, I started my career in finance and banking, and there was always this notion at the bank, because we had to work very long hours, pretty demanding work environment, that people in HR or people in recruitment didn't really do anything. Actually, my wife, she's a recruiter for a major tech company, and I've always just wondered, like, before, what is it that you do? Like, why can't companies just find their own people? And so, even if you go to business school, I think the HR program tends to be the least popular behind marketing, and finance and accounting tends to be the first. And if you ask me today, I think it should be the opposite. Like HR, recruitment, and marketing for every business is very important. So how we find our people, how I've 180'd on this is, well, first of all, I don't think recruiters should just be posting a job description on a job board. So at least my team, tend not to ask clients for a job description, like a PDF or Word document. Because if we did that, I feel like we're not really doing our job to listen properly to the problem.
Right.
So our first thing is always like, we have to understand the business. We have to understand the stage of the business that they're in. So like you said, is it 200,000 in revenue or 5 million? Because that's a pretty big difference, right? What are people working on? What is the pressing problem? And from there, we kind of fill in the blanks and we go out. And the first place we check is our own network. So, because, the more people we hire, the more brothers and sisters and cousins of those people that we know. And, because there are a lot of horror stories in outsourcing. You can find great people in Upwork and Fiverr, and I won't take that away. But you also have to get burned a few times to learn those lessons. So that's how we add our value. We go out there. We first look in a network that we trust. All the people we interview, we tend to interview them twice, and we have locals interviewing locals. So it's just like I'm here in BC. If I speak to a fellow Canadian, I can figure that person out pretty quick. And what we've learned very quickly in this business in the beginning is that, I really have no business talking to somebody, 10,000 kilometers away. And within 5 minutes, understanding sort of like this broad stroke story of their life, right? Their career path, their motivations. But if you have locals, interviewing locals, that's a different story. We then do reference checks, although I'm a little bit skeptical about reference checks just because no one's ever going to give a bad reference to somebody that asks for a reference. But we still do it anyway, sometimes just to check the logistics, if that person was there during that time, if everything matches up. But we take a recorded video of the candidate, and then we send all of this to our clients before they pay anything or sign anything, so they can make a decision if they want to invest 30 minutes of their time to speak with them. And ultimately, that's what we recommend as well, because if you're new to this, the best way is just to dip your feet wet because you don't know what to expect. So I would say that's our kind of recruitment philosophy, and that's in a nutshell our process. I forgot the second part of your question.
I'll come back to that in a second here, because I think it's great that you're like, because you're coming at this essentially with a culture mindset. Like, how can I have this person with a different culture or different values for me being interviewed by someone locally who might share those same values or have that same culture, right?
I'll add one more thing, because one of the things earlier I was saying about the solar companies is the reason why it's so prolific to have solar appointment setters or project coordinators in the Philippines is because they're 3 hours away from Australia, and every new home built in Australia, I've heard, requires a solar panel. So for Australian businesses, they've been outsourcing from the Philippines for much longer. They're developing the talent pool for you. And so for us, when we interview, we're looking for things like that, right? Like to work a graveyard shift in Eastern Standard Time or Central Time. That's not something that everyone can do. And so just because they say they can, it doesn't mean that they can. So when you interview enough candidates, when you're interviewing and screening hundreds of candidates a week, we still get it wrong sometimes, but you kind of start to see patterns. You start to recognize what works, broad statistics. And ultimately, we're just in the business of trying to make more accurate decisions for our clients than they can make for themselves. And so, when you do, I guess, again, I used to think recruiters really didn't add much value, but I think if you do it enough, you do start to deliver on some insights.
For sure. Yeah. I was a recruiter for the oil and gas industry for a spell.
Oh, were you?
So yeah, no, I totally appreciate your kind words about us as recruiters. But yeah, I mean, it is hard. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with different situations. And I think realistically, for you to put your trust in someone that is, thousands of miles away on the other side of the world, and then hoping that you yourself are good enough to train them so that they can work while you're asleep, especially here in Canada and the US, because the time zones, right, don't always.
Yeah, we can get to that. So there are options, right? So actually, a lot of our VAs, they work the local time here. So they can work Pacific Standard Time or Eastern Time. But yes, like we have clients that want continuity overnight, especially in like cybersecurity or IT.
Right.
And yeah, so but yes, you do have a point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what I'm getting at here is that for contractors specifically, there's an option or a solution for every problem. Like if you want someone who's doing your numbers overnight so that when you wake up in the morning, you've got a nice email report saying, hey, here's the results of that last HVAC job you done. Or, here's your budget compared to your P&L report from, a lot of guys are going to be having that meeting tomorrow on the 15th. That's exactly the type of system that you can set up with the help of a virtual assistant. And I don't think necessarily now, and I mean, this is, if you'd asked me before I'd actually met you and understood what you do or seen the work that you've done with my clients already, I maybe would have been a bit more skeptical, but I'm starting to see that it's no longer the case that the only way to get someone trustworthy into your business is to have someone come in-house. In fact, if COVID shows us anything, it's that the world is extremely capable of working remotely.
Yeah.
and having that extended access to other countries in terms to get your talent pool just increased by billions of people in that sense.
Yeah. You're
And I
increasing the competition, right? Especially if you are like I'm here in Kamloops, and if you own a trades business in Kamloops, your talent pool, I mean, like you said, in the grand scheme of things, is peanuts.
yeah,
How many people are going to apply for your job? So are you really hiring the best of the best? Right. So
yeah,
yes, there are technological hurdles, and of course some things are better done in person. But also we're talking about the price point here, Lee, right? So a lot of things get baked into that, baked into the convenience, no commitment, no upfront fee. And again, there are different providers that offer different models and different on the spectrum here. But it's certainly, I would just say, I think this is agreeable. It's certainly worth exploring. It's
yeah,
certainly worth trying. Yeah.
definitely.
I'm
It's
biased
definitely,
though.
yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, I always say as well, I'm like, hey, this is like, it's almost like speed dating now, right? Like you're looking
Yeah.
at someone on a screen with a bio and you get to swipe if you want to try it, and you get to pass it if you don't want it. Are you going to nail it first time every single time? No. Like at the end of the day, we, both need to learn or overcome a learning curve. There's a new job with your requirements and your expectations, and you're trying to teach somebody this who, has never worked at your company, doesn't know how you do it, and it comes back to how well you train them. So you can't just jump in and say, I needed help yesterday, I need a VA. I don't think so. I think it
Hmm.
needs to be purposely sitting down and saying, okay, what would a VA do in our business? How does that free me up to spend more time doing more high value tasks, such as marketing or sales or, numbers, financials, that kind of thing? Like, how can I use a VA to actually leverage my time? It's not a solution to a people problem, it's a time management solution, if you ask me, really. And when it
Yeah,
comes down,
you're absolutely right. And
yeah.
no, those are all excellent points.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, like having more support in the office or in your business is never going to be a bad thing. This is just a cost effective way of finding what you need from that.
Yeah. I think a lot of business owners, I mean, the default, I think like frugality is a virtue. It is good, but they kind of miss the mark when they don't realize the highest value thing they could be doing with their time.
Of
Right.
course.
So, I mean, again, you mentioned that range like 200,000 to 5 mil. There's a lot of variety there, but I would say a lot of business owners, especially now going to 2025, I mean, you should be focused on sales, focus on your customers, maybe making time to get on social media or do
Yeah.
some branding things, maybe do a podcast like this, get your face out there. But you can't, because if you're catching up on emails where you're categorizing expenses in QuickBooks, I mean, yeah, you can do it, you can squeeze it in, but it's more about, like you said, just being really deliberate.
Yeah.
What do I want to achieve? What do I want to do? And sometimes I guess that's why it really helps to work with a coach as well, someone to bring in from a different perspective.
Yeah,
But for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, this is exactly the type of exercise that I would do with my clients would be to sit down and say, what are those high value time slots in your calendar? Like, what could you be doing and what is that worth to you as a business owner in the long run? And I mean, I'm a big proponent of if you're not passionate about it, outsource it. We use this, we have a system called the love, like, tolerate, hate list. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but
No, I haven't.
essentially what we do is we have our clients get one of those little pocket notebooks from Amazon, carry it around for 3 days and mark down absolutely everything that they did and how long it took them for to complete that task. And then what they'll do is
Mm,
they'll take all that information, they'll put it in a spreadsheet into one of 4 columns: the love, the like, the tolerate, the hate. And I say, hey, by the end of this, everything that's in that tolerate and hate column, there's your job description for your next hire. That's
right.
you. We want to keep you laser focused on not only things that you're good at, but also things that you enjoy doing, because business, in a sense, there's going to be things that you don't like, there's going to be things that you do like. How much more fun would your job be if you only had to do the things you enjoy doing?
No, that's actually right, because you're speaking to a point that, yeah, it's about longevity. I mean, like, not to get philosophical, but at the end of the day, why aren't you working for someone else? Why did you start your own business? So you
Yeah,
can have autonomy and control
of
and,
course.
over your time. But if you don't, exactly. Yeah. So I love that. That's great.
Yeah, they say entrepreneurs are the only people in the world who would trade out an 80-hour work week so they don't have to work 40.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I heard something similar. My friend said to me, because I was, really kind of envious of him. He started the entrepreneurial journey early. I said, wow, like you can do whatever you want, because I think he told me he was at a climbing gym in the middle of the day. I said, that's amazing, man. I'm stuck here in the 9 to 5. And he said, yeah, but I'm jailed here by the 24/7.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're always getting pulled out. I don't know about you over Christmas, but for me, man, like being an entrepreneur, I was just itching to get back. I'm like, I've got so many things that I want to get working on, you know?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just to share, like I used to, I think a lot of people have that feeling on Sunday, like, oh, tomorrow's Monday, I gotta do this, I got all this stuff that's nagging me. I am energized and ready to go every single day. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day, and I can't wait to, get at it. But I think a lot of it, even though I didn't do this notebook activity that, you mentioned, which I think is brilliant, but, just reflecting on it now, almost by accident, or maybe because, I have to walk the talk in terms of delegation, outsourcing,
Of
that,
course.
it's worked out that way.
Yeah, yeah, it must be. There's definitely pressure on you, right? Like you own this company that has, these
Yeah.
virtual assistants, and this is what you do, and you're a master of creating time, essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you have to embody the service that, and by the way, like that's I think what we say on our landing page is, our entire team is remote. We grow
yeah,
month over month. I mean, not to say we don't have challenges, but things are going well. And so when people say, hey, remote work, I'm not sure about that. Like I run a very competitive business in a very messy industry, but we're able to do it. It's not like you said, it's not just like something that you decide yesterday that you need, and you can do it. There's a huge learning curve. But I think to stay competitive, like how you started this talk, the sooner you get on that train, the better.
yeah, absolutely. And it's more almost a case of if you do it now, you pull the trigger now, the person will grow into the role that you need. It's not a case of whether it's going to pay
Right.
itself off either way. It's always going to pay itself off, no matter what. Like, are you really saying
Yes.
that at nine, like $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour US, like whatever? Because I know that there is a range of
Yeah.
even down as low as $4 an hour, which I would never
Yep.
recommend. If you can't cover $10 an hour, you shouldn't be in business. Like $10 an hour to trade your time for. If you're doing $10 tasks, I mean,
Yeah.
give me a call because we need to talk. Like we really need to talk about your time and what you're getting up to. Um,
Again, I do appreciate frugality for business owners, because I think it's hard, especially here in Canada. I think it's really hard to run a business. It's not really conducive for success for entrepreneurs here. But like what I always say to prospects and clients is, it's about the $10 an hour, for example, but it's also about just seeing if you can budget that for a month. So let's
yeah,
say it's, 40 hours a week, say that's full time, 160 hours a month, roughly. It's $1,600. So you're going to pay that, and you're going to learn a lesson that's worth so much more. Because like you said, it's when you need that person. And I'll be honest here, because a lot of times it doesn't work out the first time. It doesn't even work out the second time. Because it's not necessarily always on the VA side, but you're going to learn things about your own management style. You're going to learn things about your business. It's up and
mm,
downs. I mean, this is a human being, right? This is not like a widget that you just buy from a store. So sometimes it takes time, and it's that learning curve, but it's an investment for sure.
yeah.
And you should should zoom out, have some patience. Uh,
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. One of the biggest things that I'll teach to my clients, especially once you're in that kind of infrastructure growth mode, right? They're planning out their organizational charts. Who will do what in 2025? Who will do what in 2026? And I'll always say, great, you're going to hire an admin, but be careful. There's always a be careful with hiring an admin because they get treated like they get dumped, things get dumped on them essentially.
yeah.
And I always find that if you throw an extremely complex job description with multiple tasks in multiple different departments, you're going to get really kind of skewed results, right? Like you're not going to get great results in any department. So I always tell someone if they're going to go in and get an assistant, even if that's in-house or virtual, I'll always say try and keep them relevant to one department. Try and
Mm,
start off with like a basic 5 tasks and then help them learn the technique, and speed and velocity can come after.
yes.
If you learn the technique and you get really good at it, then you can start adding other things in. But that's going to be one of the main reasons why this would fail for you, is going to be you've not set the right expectations. You're putting a lot of autonomy on someone who doesn't know you, your business, your situation, is expecting some training from you and how to
Right.
do it. I don't think it's a lack that they don't want to learn how to do it. They just need to learn your way of doing things. In fact, maybe that's my next business venture. Maybe I'll come up with a blueprint for a VA for these contractors and businesses, right?
It's one of those things, like those are that like really hit home, because a lot of the calls we get into are like that. I think a lot of prospects, and I understand they're focused on the hours per week. They're like, okay, is it going to be 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week? And they're trying to fill that time with tasks for the sake of filling that time with tasks,
Yeah.
right? When every task that's, like you said, unrelated to the first task, the previous task, you're diluting focus. When really the reason why you called me in the first place was because you have a focus problem on something you need to focus on. So
Mm-hmm.
your priority, in my opinion, should be just clearing yourself so you can focus on that. Because also, I think, entrepreneurs are really capable people. So when you hire someone, this tendency to go, well, I want them to just be just like me. I want them to solve all the problems that I have. So I'll give them a little bit of bookkeeping, give them a little bit of cold calling, a little bit of customer service, a little bit of this project coordination. But it might work, but like you said, it takes time. It takes time
Yeah.
to build trust with people. It takes time to nurture that relationship. In the beginning, I always recommend you'd rather have a small win than no win at all, right? So put things in bite-sized pieces. If the virtual assistant can deliver for you, that's a check mark, right? That's like, great. Now we can move on to a slightly bigger thing. But
Yeah.
all this stuff takes time. But you're right, Lee, like so many times you talk to businesses, I feel the anxiety, I feel the urgency because I needed help a long time ago. So there's this natural tendency to go, I need this person to fix everything right now.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we find, if we hire someone for this client, the VA comes in, becomes overwhelmed. And we can talk about the cultural features of Filipinos and virtual assistants specifically. But, and we find this with our New York clients, especially just the cultural gap in terms of urgency and pace, and like hustling culture, is the gap is too wide. So a
Yeah.
lot of our VAs cannot take that intensity. And so they'll walk off the job
Yeah.
after 2 weeks. So it's a very nuanced subject, and it's one that, we're continuously figuring out, but we do have some good insights on it.
Of course, yeah, and I wouldn't put anything back on a VA and say that they're not capable of performing the roles that you need them to perform in your business. They might just not have the same culture of work to live. Like
Yeah.
that's they don't have that same thing. And I mean, like you said, from your vacation, like and I love that story that you said that one of my buddies over there just wanted to come grocery shopping with me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you would never see that in. And it was just so guys could hang out, right?
Yeah.
You
Oh,
would never
there's
see
a
that
few of
here.
us. We
Yeah,
had four buggies, all at the supermarket. I've just never experienced that in my life, like going down the aisle together, putting stuff in our carts. I mean, I told you it took forever,
yeah,
but yeah, it's just a totally different mindset.
100%, 100%. That was a big eye opener for me moving to North America from, say, somewhere like Scotland,
Right.
where especially Vancouver, where I landed originally. And I'm like, look at everything that's on your doorstep. You've got beautiful mountains, you've got, natural waterfalls, you've got a million and one things to do. But you guys are so serious. And I think
That's so
it's
funny you
because,
say that about
yeah,
Vancouverites too, because like West Coast, it's considered like West Coast, Best Coast, like the laid back people. But I
yeah,
totally take your point. I mean, we lived in Glasgow for a while. I mean, but compared to people in the East Coast, like Toronto and New York, it's different. But yeah, you're right. Like people here, we just like to stay busy
yeah.
for the sake of it.
And I think part of that is that they've never had or tried anything else. They've never had an option to have more assistance for not a whole lot of extra money. Like one thing about me and Victor, for the people listening here, is we share a cleaner as well, right? Like we live really, really
Yeah.
close to each other, or did up until recently, until she moved away. But I had my eyes opened when we hired that cleaner. I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. I'm coming upstairs after a shift doing coaching calls, and my house is gleaming, or the things that
It's
I didn't want
nice.
to do. It's super nice. I'm not thinking about the money. I'm not thinking about how much it
Yeah.
costs me. I'm just like, well, now we can go out and hang out at the park, or maybe, me and the kid can go do this or go do that.
Yeah.
It was totally eye opening, and I think one of the things that it made me rush to do was to go and reread a book called Who Not How. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book before.
I've heard of it, but I have not read that one. No.
But yeah, I went back to that. I got my highlighter out. I'm like highlighting all this. I'm like, oh yeah, this. And I started listening to another podcast called Automate Your Life as well, where the guy teaches you how to automate your personal life too. You know, like laundry services,
Right.
cleaners, meal prep services, stuff like that. And I'm like, really, the only question is how little do you want to do and how much money do you want to pay? There is an option for everything in your life now, and in your business specifically, and I always find this when you have someone, right, and this is just my dream version of a VA for a contractor. If you're listening, highly recommend that you get in contact with Victor and you make this part of the job description, is having someone who's controlling your numbers in the background and keeping you in the loop. And I usually find that a lot of contractors, just by knowing how profitable they were on the last job, from having someone sit there, plug all the material invoices in, plug all the labor hours in, do all the math and calculations and send an email, those contractors are some of the most profitable contractors in the world, the ones who just know their numbers.
Yeah.
And that's where a VA stepping in, they're covering what they cost tenfold, because they're keeping you at a level of informed that you've never experienced before. And that's where I really think that a VA can, not just that, there's other things as well. But if I was to have my way, I'd have a VA doing one for finance, I'd have one in sales. If I was even at a point in my business where I was thinking of expanding and I wanted to bridge that gap between, we've upgraded production, but we're trying to, get more sales, hire a VA in sales to give them the assistance, give them help, give them support. Let's take all those repetitive tasks off of their plate because they're good at smiling people and going and selling jobs, and give the filling out of the work order or, summarizing an estimate to a VA who can do that for you. Like, I don't think it's a case of can you afford it? I think it's a case of you can't afford it if you want to expand rapidly,
Yes.
And it's
there's a lot I want to comment on there, but I'm just going to start because I'm really excited about this. Talking about the cleaning and outsourcing delegation, I don't know if you ever tried. Oh, actually, you told me you had groceries delivered, I think.
Yeah, we've done that.
But
Yeah.
I did the pickup groceries, so just ordering online and picking up at Safeway. You get designated parking. Someone brings it out to you, and like people are like, "Oh, I'm worried about the apples being bruised, eggs being cracked." No, it doesn't happen. It's perfect. And you know what? Like in about 7 minutes shopping on a computer screen, you can add up to like $200 in your cart very fast because instead of walking through the aisles. Anyways, I'm very excited about that. If you haven't tried that, you're already doing the next best thing, which is delivery. I still have to drive 8 minutes. Woe is me. But anyways, and I'd love to comment on what we see work well, especially in sort of the trades contractor industry.
Yeah.
Definitely on the number side. So one thing I'll share, and I tell this to everybody, is a lot of business owners use QuickBooks. So you're calling QuickBooks help. You're probably talking to a QuickBooks Pro advisor or a QuickBooks Certified Pro. I don't know what they call it now. But that office is in the Philippines. And so what just think about it. You could really just hire somebody like that for $8, $9 an hour US to be in your business. And they're Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. They went to business school. They have North American work experience, and they can help you out. Now, if you are more focused on sales, again, I've never ran a contractor business, a trades business, but I know a lot of times it's like the first one to get back to the customer gets the work.
Yeah.
And I speak to so many business owners, they're like out there trying to get new opportunities, but they got a pipeline of emails that they haven't responded back to. And so to me, that seems like the bottleneck. And so just having somebody, the moment they email, get back to them right away. And you can pick up the phone too. You can get a voice over IP phone. It's no problem. It's like $20 a month. The VA, fluent in English, can call this person and go, "Hey, sir or ma'am, I see you emailed us. I'll have to give you a price estimate right now. I got a little Excel model and, you put something in front of them to give them something. Or if you're really busy, listen, the owner is out. I'm going to just message him right now and he's going to get back to you in 6 hours. Is that okay?" That to me is like, that'll win you business.
Yeah. It's
because I had the hot water tank here service, and obviously there's not that many providers here. But I called one place, didn't pick up the phone, went to voicemail. I'm just like, okay, you're lost. Next. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, man. I think you're absolutely right. That's one of the big lessons that we talk. We do an exercise called the T-Rex experience. It stands for the retail experience, which is putting yourself in the shoes of your customer and assessing it. How easy is it to book with you? How easy is it to work with you? Because ultimately, we live in this economy where the cost of everything has went up, but the level of service has went down. You know,
Yes, it has.
and it is, as somebody who owned a business that prized itself on a premium service and subsequently could charge premium pricing for it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Speed to lead, systems on, when do I get that email? When do I get that quote? Who's going to send it first? I'm going to get, it's such a convoluted industry because the foundations or the baseline is so sporadic,
Yeah.
especially specifically in construction. I find a lot of clients, they don't even know how good it can be from a contractor because they're so focused on it being a negative experience almost
So
every time.
absolutely. I mean, again, maybe it's me having worked in sort of kind of let's call it white collar industry, but I I call a contract and I get a text back. I get
Hmm.
a text back and it's like all abbreviations. Instead of saying the word you, it's like the letter U. It's like
Yeah,
call
yeah,
you back later. Or and then they'll show up 20 minutes late. So look, I get it. People are busy, but you're totally right. You got to put yourself in the customer's shoes and think about in the last year how many phenomenal experiences has this customer had with a contractor in any space.
yeah,
I think the bar for service in general is really low, at least where we are. There's not enough competition, but competition is coming. So I think there's like a lot of good ways to stand out. Something I heard from Gary Vee before is, like after you've done the job, are you calling back that customer, 3 months, 6 months, even longer? Just go,
hmm,
hey, you still like your kitchen cabinets? You still like your kitchen counter? How's everything holding up? Right? Well, just wanted to check in, not selling you anything, be on your way. But now that person's gonna say, wow, this company cares about me, and they're gonna have you top of their mind when they're at a Christmas party or a gathering, or they go to a friend's house who are looking to renovate or something like that, right?
hmm, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's really simple for you just to give that experience, focus on giving that experience to your customer where you do install the cabinets or the kitchen countertops, and then what is it, setting a calendar appointment to follow up for a VA or,
yeah, that's it. And just a reminder that day, hey Bob, don't forget to give Jane a call and just say thanks. Takes 2 minutes, but now you're in that person's head. I mean, that's why I make a bunch of videos on LinkedIn, and it really works.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that, if you're sending that kind of communication, like, hey, like, thanks again for choosing us as your contractor, just checking in 3 months later to make sure you're still happy, that's never going to be a point in contention for your customer. They're always going to appreciate that. So the next time you call and you say, hey, listen, I've just added 2 new products to my offerings, just giving you the heads up, it might make them go, hey, listen, like, that might be something that we might want in the future.
Right.
But it's not coming from a sales hesitancy standpoint. It's coming from that's a friend who did us a favor. They did a good job. They care about us. Now
Yeah.
they're offering us something else. Well, you tell me are they going to pull the trigger? Probably, if they're thinking about doing that thing. So I think that's awesome, man. I definitely think that a VA could benefit a contractor in many, many areas. One question that I did have for you was when if you were to prioritize, like, here's the top 3 benefits
Yeah.
for a contractor, and let's just say someone at the $1 million mark, that makes up most of my clients, but someone at the $1 million mark who is looking to expand their team and they're trying to figure out how a VA would fit into that. Like, what would be the top 3 things that they could expect with a VA in a contracting business at that size?
Okay, I don't know about top three, and this is just my perspective. I think the point you made about, at $1 million in sales, having some sort of analytics or some sort of guidance into what you're doing, it starts to move the needle, right? Like if you're overpaying for this and undercharging for that, it starts to make a difference. Like
Mm-hmm.
to go from a million to 1.1 is just a 10% price increase, for example, which if your customers could absorb it and they're happy with the service, means you call them back, say thank you, why not? But I'll just answer that question maybe a different way. I think a lot of businesses think about outsourcing as like cost reduction and taking care of administrative overhead. And I think we've talked about this a lot. And just in the latter part of this conversation, what I want to focus on is actually the times where we see companies hiring VAs where it's like the best success case is when they are hiring people focusing on increasing revenue. So
Right.
it's not this cost saving mentality, it's the growth mentality. And like I said, that's why solar companies, yeah, they might hire a bookkeeper, right? They might hire an admin assistant, but the biggest thing is they'll have a team of 5 appointment setters, for example. Now, this is solar. It's a little bit different. Where
Mm-hmm.
you'll see during the real estate boom, realtors did this. But again, for me, it's we have to make sure our clients get an ROI. And it's very hard, even though it's great, like they take care of your admin stuff, your bookkeeping. So now on Friday night, you can have dinner with your family or play with your kids in the yard uninterrupted. The thing is, people are just bad at math. People are
Mm-hmm.
just bad at kind of rationalizing how many dollars that's worth.
Yeah.
But when you leverage virtual assistants in sales, in client management, relationship management, you could see a very tangible return from that.
Yeah.
So I could say, this is how much you paid for your VA services, and this is how much you earned in revenue that you couldn't have by yourself. So that's just where we see the success case. Of course, it's just incredibly nuanced, Lee, right? Like even at $1
Yeah.
million, it just depends on what kind of business you are, how set up are you.
Of
We'll be
course.
here for hours.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think, and again, I think that just works even on my point that there's someone for everything in any business, no matter what your solution is. It's about meeting or connecting with a very capable company that can go through that vetting process to understand you and your situation specifically, so that they can link you up specifically with somebody in the Philippines. And I think that's the difference between just jumping online and posting a job ad,
Yeah.
and getting a good result. Because my fear is that people are going to say, oh yeah, we went online, we found a VA, it didn't work out, and now we don't trust VAs, and I'm never going to try it again. I think
Yeah.
if we can overcome this, it's going to take a couple tries.
You know what? Somebody said this to me and is totally right. This person runs a SEO agency and he just says like, we're both. So the outsourcing virtual assistance agency is in a very competitive, noisy, and cynically viewed industry. So because the barrier to entry is almost non-existent, anybody can start one of these agencies, just
Mm-hmm.
like many people can start all sorts of businesses. The standard tend not to be very high, right?
Yeah.
And so clients get burned. Clients get burned doing it themselves. And even the clients are like, you know what, I don't want to go on Upwork anymore. That was crazy. I got, this VA I hired was actually doing 3 other jobs and out subcontracting this work to somebody else. And I was overpaying. And that client says, I'm going to hire an agency. They could be burned by 2 or 3
Yeah.
agencies. So it's just it's a very noisy industry. And obviously this is just cheap words, but we're doing our best to try to, do something different. And, I think ultimately it just comes down to each client's experience and we can look at retention rates and referral rates and things like that. But either way, I go back to, and I always say this to businesses, like you might come to a company like us just to learn a lesson and just to hire someone just to experience it. And you might, 6, 7 months down the road, realize like, wow, this is a great possibility and I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go all in myself. And I'll honestly say, good for you. That's
Yeah.
great. Right. So we're not trying to, kind of hog the whatever the prize, so to speak. Right. But we do think we're in business for a reason. We can help companies overcome that learning curve, which is very noisy and sometimes problematic, for them to make a decision later on if that's good enough for them or if they want to go all in.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one, and I think in the grand scheme of things, this is still generally a new. I don't want to call it new technology, but a new option for a lot of contractors, for a lot of businesses, just overall. Like I think there is a lot more trust, going into the online support world, but there is still a lot of skepticism. And here's a classic example. Like I've got a client who really wants to work with a VA, but he will not hand over his access to his QuickBooks, but that's part of her main job description. So the only time that she gets to look at that is when they're on the phone together at the same time. And I think you need to overcome that trust as well.
So that part, yeah, everyone's got different risk appetite, willingness, and ability to take risks. I think maybe what I will say is 2/3 of American businesses are outsourcing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's good enough for a bank like JP Morgan, it might be good enough for you. We have clients who are lawyers who, you talk about accounting, we have clients who are accountants. So they not only use QuickBooks, but they have the QuickBooks files of over 50 clients. And I think that's a great point that you bring up about privacy and confidentiality. Actually, I would make an argument here that it's way easier for somebody local to do something malicious to you because probably there is a higher kind of perception of trust. You might give them more access to things, and they might, there was cases of bookkeepers embezzling funds with, the owner's e-transfer, for example. That's a way we send money in Canada. But when you look at the Philippines, again, not to say these things don't happen, but, it's a feature of the culture that people are very honest. And also, what do they stand to gain from getting your client's contact information on QuickBooks? It's a developing country where their number one priority within the family unit is support each other, send their kids and brothers and nephews to school. It's widely known that Filipinos, when they earn a paycheck, it goes to the family, not themselves, for example. Mm-hmm. So these are sort of examples that we tell clients. Like, yes, I understand the paper risk. It's a non-zero probability that they will delete your QuickBooks account for no reason. It's non-zero. They could do that, right? But I don't see why they would.
Yeah.
I really.
So their focus is going to be on how can I get longevity and more stability with a company in the US or Canada, for example, so that they can benefit from the US dollar if that's what they're getting paid in. Right?
They're getting paid in US dollars, yeah.
Which, we talked about that rate there. We said, $6, $7, $8, $9, and then even cheaper if you really wanted to go that route, which we don't recommend. That, where is a good living wage for them? Is it $6, $7, $8, $9 an hour? Like if they're making, that's a good living wage. They don't have the same, cost of living crisis that we have here. They can get a lot farther on that $6, $7, $8, right? Would you agree?
Well, so again, I think, and this is why I went to the Philippines, right? And I'm going to just drop a couple of bombs here because I think everyone talks about, average wages. It's very easy to go on Google and pull average salaries and stuff. But what they're missing is, for example, if you don't have a virtual job in the Philippines, and let's say you live in Ortigas, which is in Manila, and you got to commute to Makati, which is a business district, it's going to take you 2 hours every day, one way. Not only that, if your shift starts at 8, you have to get there at 6:30 because you either get there at 6:30 or 7, or you might get there at 9. So now you wake up at 4, get yourself dressed. There's no childcare infrastructure or systems. There are no institutions for that. The idea of a daycare doesn't exist. And so you go to work early, you wait for your shift to start. You're not getting paid. Then you work, frankly, your ass off, right? The phones don't stop ringing. Doesn't matter how quick or how smart you work, even though you're college educated, you're bright, you're smart, you have to study very hard. Then you go home, take you 2 hours, and you got to do it over again. So yes, there is the wage aspect, but there's also just like what this means for people's time, what this means for people's families. It's a very family-oriented culture. And then going back to the income stability part, I mean, I love this example because it's always a little bit, I feel like it could be like could be the opening hook of this podcast even. But like, how many Filipino restaurants do you know? Here in Canada, we're very multicultural, very diverse. How many Filipino restaurants do you know in Vancouver? Okay, now think about how many Korean restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Japanese restaurants you know, Indian restaurants that you know. There are so many. Why is that? Filipinos don't like food? That's not the case. It's just that it's a feature of the culture that people are risk averse. They prefer income stability versus, say, myself, I'm of Chinese descent. I don't want to work for anybody, right? When a Korean new immigrant comes to Canada, again, not to be stereotypical, I don't want to get in trouble, but they're going to say, I'm going to open a business. I'm going to open a convenience store, right? Because it's mine. So that's just a cultural difference. So there's all these factors that go into play. Of course, we try to make videos about it, but going back to, your client, I understand her concern of, hey, I don't want to share these financial details. It's just a much more nuanced conversation. And I think she understood it a bit more and she might see it differently.
Which is great. This is it. And this is exactly why we're doing this podcast, because my goal with this podcast episode with you, and I'm sure this isn't going to be the last one that we do together,
You're tired of repeating yourself.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
well, it's that, but also giving a little bit of peace to a skip. Like, and I understand this as a business coach, right? Like, there's a million and one business coaches out there. There's a very, very small percentage of good ones, and people have been burned in the past with signing up for 6-week programs, right? Like,
Yeah.
or signing up for coaching for 6 months and it never worked and it's freaking expensive. Like, I understand that. You guys go through the same thing. You know, with my coaching program, I want my clients to be able to scale rapidly, but strategically, and doing it smart. So, you know, not overspending, not throwing money away if we can avoid it, right? Because a dollar lost is a dollar that could have been put into marketing. A dollar lost could have been a dollar that was put into, you know, an incentive plan for the employees, for example. I want more people to embrace the fact that VAs are as big as they are, right? And they do apply to the construction industry as well.
It's probably the last industry that's not picked it up. And again, because like would you say that if you make kitchen cabinets, your standard of work is, or that the consequences of your work is higher than a business accountant or a lawyer?
Yeah.
Like, maybe, right? Obviously, in different contexts, I care about my kitchen, how it looks and stuff. But just in sort of monetary value of some of these contracts, I mean, we work with 8, 9 figure revenue companies, and there are 10, 11, like, you know, JP Morgan, AT&T. Obviously, they have computers, they have systems in place. But again, I think, like you said, the nomenclature of outsourcing is like, oh, this is a thing. When really you're just hiring people. And
Yeah.
you've just, like you said earlier, very eloquently, actually, you just expanded your talent pool globally instead of the little city or town that you're in, if you are in one. And if you are in a big city, well, then you know you have to compete for people to come in to work for you. Maybe you train them, they don't stick around. Then, you know, there is the real economic stuff as well, right? Like you're paying here in Canada, you have to contribute to pension, employment insurance, minimum wage is going up, but, you know, GDP per capita earnings is not going up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what we do, I also forgot to mention, is after we recruit, is we are an employer of record. So we make the billing easy, and we offer the staff premium healthcare, which is, in the Philippines, it's not the healthcare system like we have. You pretty much need private insurance, and we provide that for our staff, which serves as a retention tool.
Gotcha.
But all that number, you know, that range, like, you know, 8, 9, 10. Again, it depends, but it kind of is inclusive of all of that. So I have this more contentious example as well. You know, here in Canada, if you go to McDonald's or you go to Tim Hortons, something like that, a lot of times you are going to see a newly landed immigrant. That's like their first job, but that's just outsourcing. There's no difference between that and the T-shirt that you're wearing,
Mm-hmm.
which is most likely made in Bangladesh or China or Vietnam, right? So it's just, I think for people to switch that and go, okay, like, I'm wearing a T-shirt made in China, I'm going to McDonald's where I'm being served by a newly landed immigrant, but I will not hire a college educated, experienced person from the Philippines who's willing to work my business hours at 200 megabytes per second download. That's the part I think is just, in time it might shift. And again, like I said, I think 2/3 of American businesses were outsourcing already during the pandemic. Might be a bit less now, might be a bit more, I don't know.
Yeah, I think what these guys need to see is addressing some of that skepticism, is they need to see more happy wins stories.
Yes.
From peers, right? So from more contractors. And now, you know, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, almost every single client that I have worked with has had a conversation with Victor at some point as a natural lead in expansion of their businesses to see if VAs would be an option. Not because we're trying to, trying to get them to spend a ton of money or get our clients to spend a ton of money, is because that is a really easy and simple step for them to open their eyes to expansion. When we move into this world of, or when I've moved clients into this world of virtual assistants, it's like a light bulb goes off. Like, I'm thinking of guys like Ian, right? Like Ian got a freaking CPA trained, like a fully trained CPA,
a real CPA
business as an admin person, right? He also had a second VA come on board to help him with some design stuff, right? Like, so drawing, you know, we've got other guys who are like Heidi and Steven, for example. I can't even tell you the things they say about their VA. They're just like I didn't
Oh,
spend
good.
2 hours on the phone with TELUS today because the VA did it for us. And I'm like,
Yeah.
amazing. They're like, why did we not know about this sooner? So those stories that I just talked about, like, they are out there. There are contractors who are using VAs, and I like to think that my guys are some of the ones who are kind of spearheading this, right? Like, we're going to rack up more of those win stories. These are guys who are going to be your competitors as a listener, to this show.
Yeah.
If they end up working with me, I'm pushing them to expand their infrastructure, get those VAs, and spend their time wisely. And I think we're just at the beginning of this, and it's
You
awesome.
you you mentioned something I just want to address is you mentioned that the skepticism comes from maybe past experiences of hiring someone. And I want to be really balanced here, right? Like one of the most popular roles that people outsource for on Upwork is like a web developer or graphic designer. But let's stick with a web developer
Mm-hmm.
because maybe the client wants a new website or something like that. But it's really one of those services that, in my opinion, you're better off hiring a reputable agency that has done that, like produces, 30 websites a week. You might pay a little bit of a premium, but it's not going to be a headache because you really have very few people have an idea of how to manage a web developer to develop on a web building project in a development sprint timeline with resources. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like they've set themselves up for some failure, or they hire a graphic designer because they want to post on social media, like on Instagram, but they don't really have the full, like all the pieces of the puzzle there of how do you run an effective social media strategy. Like, by the way, follow us on TikTok, Treantly Outsourcing. Thank you. We just hit 950,000 views on our latest post there. And it's not really an accident. You have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's not even, when we talk about horror stories on Upwork, it's not always because somebody scammed someone or it's like a malicious intent. A lot of times it's like, frankly, like for example, even bookkeeping, right? Like the QuickBooks we're talking about. I have a finance and accounting background, and even hiring a bookkeeper for this business when we started, I kind of went through two people because you have to manage them.
Yeah.
You have to get involved. So there's always that aspect, and that's why we take the call with anybody that wants to kind of explore the space. And that's why we don't just ask for, like, within the first 5 minutes, I think I need a bookkeeper. We go, oh great, send us a job description. No.
Yeah.
We go, why do you think you need a bookkeeper? Why do you think you need a web developer? Tell us a bit more about that. Because again, for us, we're a recurring revenue business, and all our work is mostly front loaded. So the last thing we want to do is, for the lack of a better term, like trick somebody into a sale just for it to end a month later or 2 weeks later, right? So we turn away more people than we take in, but we need to understand the problem first. So yeah, I do agree with you. People should have better experiences. But yeah, why doesn't a company hire a web agency? Well, because there are so many crooked web agencies out there. So it just seems like this entire B2B space is just very cynically viewed. There's a lot of crooks in there. So it's very hard to navigate. And if you're a business owner, everyone's trying to cold pitch and slap you with something.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. Yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying for me, but it's what it is.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think for us nowadays, and this is kind of cool for people who are on the receiving end of podcasts like this or marketing like what we do, is we understand that we have to pump more into the industry to build credibility so that our customers then come to us, our clients come to us afterwards. They need to know who we are. They need to know that we know what we're talking about. And that's what ultimately makes the decision. Whereas with contractors working with normal clients, I mean, 10 times out of 10 is, oh, you have a project that needs done, I'm your guy. For us, we go through a much deeper vetting process going business to
There's
business.
a dance.
Because we all think we know what each other does. You know what I mean? Why do I need a sales guy? I know how to sell. I've been a sales guy in the past. Or why do I need marketing? I know how to market, right? I'll be the first one to admit that, see, I've got strong suits as a business coach. Like, I'm great at two things, like my two favorite things: build an incredible culture between teams, right? So getting people charged up and ready to go and absolutely light it up for you in production.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is tearing apart a profit and loss statement and telling you where you're wasting your money and where you should be making more money. Two biggest skills. When it comes to marketing, Yeah, I've got a fundamental understanding of it, but it's all been through failure. It's all been through putting 2 grand into Facebook ads that got one lead that
Right.
was garbage. Or it's been, wrapping the truck just to figure out that they had put the wrong phone number on it or something like that.
Oh
Been
no.
there, done that. All of that experience has come through failure. So, even now for me, I'm now at a point where if I don't know something, I'll get an expert involved. I'll explain to the point where I know, but I'll get an expert and I'll say, well, listen, how do I make sure I don't fail at this? And that's my next question for you, actually, is if there's people who are listening to this podcast episode who are thinking, well, the whole concept of a VA sounds kind of cool. How do I get it right? Like, what are some of the things, the do's and don't do's that contractors should be thinking about when they're kind of broaching the subject of bringing a VA into their business?
And this is going to sound ridiculous, is just stop thinking about it like a VA. You know what's funny is we actually don't use the term VA in our own teams. Like it's just interesting, right? Because when we talk to clients, they say VAs. Everybody says VAs.
Right.
But in our own team, like in our own recruitment channels, when we're working, we don't. We just say people's names, right? So, but that highlights something. I think there's people still think like a VA, maybe because of Tim Ferriss's book like 2 decades ago, 4 Hour Work Week. People somehow think like a VA is an off the shelf solution, but really you're just dealing with a human relationship. It's like meeting a new neighbor, right? It's like meeting a new roommate or whatever it is. I don't imagine most of your listeners have roommates. Maybe that's not the right example. And this person comes from a different culture, but they got a skill set that could work very well with you in harmony. In fact, even their language, even their core values of family, for example, community might be very similar to yours, but still a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just taking the time to really understand that person, ask them, hey, what are your dreams and ambitions? And what does your brother do? What does your sister do? Tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad. Do you have dogs? Like sometimes I speak to my clients and I'll say things about the VA and they're like, what? Oh, I didn't know they have 5 dogs. I'm like, well, yeah, it's like, I love dogs. Right? A lot of Filipinos have dogs. Right? So just as an example. So I think it's just taking a step back. It's not an off-the-shelf solution. If you're hiring a new contractor, a new local person, a new sales rep, you're going to put that person through the ringer. You're going to interview them. You might even go out for lunch just to see how they are. If they're client facing, you might, do a little more, and then you're going to get to know them over time. And I think when people hire VA, they kind of just think, oh, I don't need to do anything there. I don't need to talk to them. I don't need to check in on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes what happens is, they're people, right? And they just feel like they've been abandoned in a business, and then they just leave. So yes, there are huge time savings and there's huge benefits. We've seen lots of clients have success stories, but those clients really focus in on the relationship management. So that's like an angle I don't think anybody will tell you, but that's just the reality. Yeah.
So it's like culture. It's like you still need to build a culture. We can't look at it as a basic form of transaction. I pay you money to complete these skills. Is your performance is going to be based on how much you can integrate into the company, communicate with us, be part of the team. And I think you're totally bang on, man.
I have one more too, and this is going to sound like I'm pushing a sales plug, but I'm not. But the Filipino community, what they value is community. That's why they love karaoke's and big buffets, and they like to cook together, grocery shop together, go to church together. So we find also the best success. Again, it's not a sales plug, it's just reality. If you hire more than one person. So they have a colleague that they can talk to that, in their own language sometimes, or relating to their own challenges or expressing themselves. But of course, I understand not every business can get to that point. But, I have a team. I think it's a pretty sizey team. They don't really tell me anything now because they think I'm just, the boss, right? Big bad wolf. But they'll confide things in each other and they'll support each other in times of stress. But now, everyone understands that concept locally. It's like, I got a solid team here. Like what you were saying, you want teams to cross and gel with each other. It's the same thing with VA. But this person's, depending on where you are, like 10,000 kilometers away. They're by themselves, logging in, in a dark room at their nighttime, waiting for interaction. It can be tough.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think you've opened my eyes up a lot more to understanding the situation that they're in, and I think if you can make them as comfortable as possible, they will go to bat for you and do a good job. You know, yeah, that's incredible, man. I think, as we progress into 2025, 2026, 2027, we're going to see the rise in AI, but I think all we're really talking about here is the rise of outsourcing is what it is.
Yeah. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. First of all, like computing costs aren't free, right? So whenever there's a new company, software company that's coming up with an AI solution, like a chat bot or a specific trained thing, they're going to charge you as much as they can monthly. But like was a little bit cliche, but like talent is still the number one asset class. Like 100%. When you have good people in your company, especially in service and industry, that's all you are. That's all you have is the people you have and the words that you use, right?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I'm taking away from this call, just to start wrapping things up, Victor. And like I said, this probably won't be the last time that we do this. I think we could
hope not.
We could do some more together. So just to recap, here's what I'm hearing. You said, you need to take the chance. You need to just jump in, try it for yourself, and eventually it will work out. You're not going to get it right the first time. There might be a second time, but hopefully third time is the charm. For me, it's going to be preparation if you are going to bring somebody on. And it's the exact same if you're going to be recruiting for an employee. What does the orientation day look like? What does onboarding look like? What does ongoing training look like? You can't have that system if you're looking for someone that you should have hired yesterday. On-the-job training doesn't really work for VAs. I have seen this. So the more prepared that you can be, the more successful they will be. For me, we use things like Loom videos, SOP documents, training videos, and anything that you're missing after the first little while, you can tell your VA, hey, listen, go make the SOP for that task that I showed you last Wednesday. And they go, all right, okay, I'll put it together for you. But yeah, like using a VA to actually build the infrastructure from a documentation standpoint is great too. And then lastly, like bring them into the culture, right? Like, show them who your company really is, not just in-house, but remotely as well. Like, how do you celebrate and promote a culture to people who are in more of a remote? Because I think 2027, 2028, 2029, this isn't something that's going to go away. It's one of those ones like the internet wasn't a fad. Google, stayed the course, and now Google reviews are the big thing. And there were so many contractors who said the internet's not going to be a thing, or Google, it's not going to be Google, it's going to be Yelp or whatever. This isn't going to go away. This option is on the table for you today. It's cost effective. You can be good at it, but you need to put the time in to make sure that you nail it. And I think that's my biggest ones for taking away. Yeah. Would you?
No, thank you. I love that you finished on that one, because that's the one I just want to say. There are going to be many companies that say, this is a magic bullet. This is, like quick and effective. We'll find you somebody in 3 days and all your problems are solved. Or 2 days. I've seen matching in 24 hours. But there's just no real shortcuts in life and in business. And anything that's worth something is going to take work. It's going to take effort. And in this case, that holds true as well.
Absolutely. So to wrap things up here, Victor, I'm gonna throw an offer out to anybody who's on this podcast here listening today. If you want to get your hands on our admin workbook that we have, which will help you not only design a job description or find out those roles for someone like a VA or even an in-house person, hit me up on the Facebook group. Link is in the show notes. And then for Victor, how do we find you, man? Plug yourself. Give us the rundown. How do we find you?
Yeah, so you can find our company on LinkedIn, and you'll see my posts everywhere. Treantly is spelled Treantly. We are on YouTube, TikTok. Hope it doesn't get banned in Canada as well. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and the handle there is @Treantly Outsourcing. So come check out our content. It's not just me rambling. We do interviews on the street, so you can see what the Philippines look like. Who are the people that might be potentially working for you? And you'll also be getting insights from our recruiters and our team.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Yeah, and like I said, I've worked with Victor for a long time, and I wouldn't bring him on here if I wasn't sure that he does a good job for his clients. And Yeah, get in contact with him or reach out to me and I can link you up with Victor, guys. Until the next one, yeah, stick in, keep working hard on your businesses, and remember, start marketing for spring because it's coming faster than you think it will. So it's time to pick up the phone and stick the pedal to the metal. Victor, thanks again, man, and I will chat with you soon.
Thank you, Lee.